Smooth 98.1. I love music, love life. This is Freshly Pressed. It's Zibby here, and we've got our analyst of the day, Mr. C and Chibuzor. We love it when you are a part of the conversation. So let us know what your thoughts are. The WhatsApp number is 0809 4440981. You can also tweet at Smooth981. We're also streaming live on YouTube. That's Smooth981 on YouTube. And you can actually post the comments underneath that live stream as well. Good morning, Mr. C, and good morning, Chibuzor.
Good morning, Zibby. Good morning, Chibuzor. Good morning, Lagos.
Good morning, Zibby. Good morning, Mr. C, and good morning, Lagos.
All right, so Mr. C is in traffic, the beauty of living in Lagos. But let's get on with Freshly Pressed. And we're taking our first story from Daily Trust. The continued Naira scarcity across Nigeria has grounded countless small and medium businesses, and it's also pushed millions of families to increased poverty. In this report, a lot of these small-scale businesses are talking about how their businesses have basically disappeared from existence. Now, according to a 2023 report by the Small and Medium Enterprise Development Agency of Nigeria, there are at least 39,654,385 MSMEs in Nigeria, and they contribute for about 96.7%. They contribute to about 96.7% of businesses. Shit. Yes, Mr. C.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Zibby. So, unfortunately, we're here now. Now, when this policy was announced in October last year, there was reservations in some quarters as to the effectiveness of this policy. But the federal government and the CBN stuck to their guns and implemented the policy, which had one of the stated aims of reducing the effect of large sums of money being used to corrupt or pervert the electoral system. We've had one election, and to be fair, the use of money or the effect of money in that election wasn't as widespread as it was in previous elections. However, there have been unintended effects. And one of the unintended effects I want to believe is the literal shutting down of small and medium-scale enterprises because they do not have the requisite amounts of cash to continue operating on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, you have the person who's fries pancakes for you, or what we call akara. You have the person who fries who roasts plantains for you. You have the person who sells groundnuts in bottles. Now, most of them have not been able to go cashless for varying reasons. And then you even have your regular workers in paid employment who find it difficult getting to work if there are no staff buses, if they don't have their own cars, because they cannot afford to pay the bus fares. Now, we must note that some bus drivers accept transfers, but some do not accept transfers. Then we speak about the problems with the electronic system of going cashless. So we've seen banking systems, we've seen the online banking system struggle to cope with the increased demand for services. We've seen instances where certain banks cannot be found at critical points because they cannot deal with the demand. So you have a situation where there's no cash or there's next to no cash, then you can't even do the non-cash transaction, which is in the electronic form, because of one hindrance or the other. Now, something has to give. The Supreme Court did give a ruling that the old 500 and 1,000 bank Naira notes remain in legal tender till the 31st of December 2023. However, there's been complete silence both from the federal government and the CBN. Now, the big question is, if the federal government decides to disobey this ruling, this order, it will not be the first time. And then what is the implication for the man on the street? Because people are literally suffering. I know someone who put in a check for 20,000 and submitted it to the bank on Monday. He still hasn't gotten value for it. Now, when the ordinary man can no longer eat, can no longer survive, because to get the people who rely on daily work to survive. So even if you transfer money to their accounts, they need to be able to buy food. And you go to an eatery, they tell you the POS is down, do a transfer, your bank isn't helping matters. So it then begs the question, how do we proceed as a nation? So it's very dire times, and I just wish the CBN and the federal government will admit that this policy hasn't worked out the way they thought it will work out, and then come up with a plan to mitigate the suffering, the widespread suffering that Nigerians are going through all over the nation. And until they're able to do that, it's going to be really, really tough for Nigerians. So let's see what happens this week. I understand that the on-road order of the Supreme Court was served on the Attorney General on Friday, and I want to believe that we will start to see some traction. However, I do fear that despite the order, the CBN might no longer have sufficient quantities of the old notes to reintroduce into the banking system. Now, if that is the case, then there's a real problem, because they don't have sufficient quantities of the newly redesigned notes, and it begs the question, where are we going from here?
Yeah, I think I'd like to chip in a bit here. So, like Mr. C said, and I think the story points out, it has larger effects, not just on transactions moving out, but obviously, like it's been mentioned in the story, on small businesses. My family, for instance, have been limited to shopping at the big stores, at shops, because at least they accept to some level electronic transfers, which means that the guy who used to sell tomatoes and onions, which used to patronize, the woman who used to buy meat from, those small businesses that require the money that we pay out of our pocket to increase what they make, and for them also to be able to spend and to grow the economy and to feed their families, are not getting those funds because people cannot approach them, because they don't have cash to make those transactions. And for everybody who keeps saying the electronic transactions, a lot of these guys they deal with very small amounts of money. So I want to buy 200 Naira onions, 150 onions or tomatoes. You look at it, you look at the charges. How much charges do I have to pay? So even when they do accept those things, what has happened now is that you have a direct increase in prices of those goods and services, because they have to factor in whatever you're going to be paying or having to get cash or move the money around, and also the costs with it. So, like Mr. C said, the biggest fear I have is that the central bank probably does not have the money to be able to bring back into circulation. But the biggest annoyance for most of Nigerians is that we've not heard anything from the federal government. So we're hoping that will change in this week, because whichever direction the government wants to go, at least you need to communicate with these people. And that's one of the problems of lack of accountability of the government to the people. There's no push, or there's no feel that there's a need to keep communicating and telling the people which direction you are moving. There has been complete silence over this period, apart from the president's broadcast ones. That broadcast, I think, is about 2 weeks old now, and nothing really has changed for the people. So we're expecting that things should change, hopefully, in the coming week.
All right, let's take a few messages. Adewale says federal government and the CBN will probably not speak until after the elections. Shegun, people who encourage the federal government to ignore earlier Supreme Court rulings and the CBN, therefore punishing Nigerians, must now be saying what others foresaw. Abbas says majority of the people who condemned the implementation of this policy in the beginning foresaw this problem, but some people decided to be political about it. Now it has dawned on us all that the informal sector of the economy is really facing a hard time, and all of us are bearing the brunt. Ajayi says it's unbelievable that the president will continue to turn deaf ears on the cries of the masses in respect of this Naira scarcity, even as traders and other small business owners are closing down due to non-patronage. I wonder exactly the benefit of this policy is. Okay, let's move on to the next story. And this one comes from The Guardian. The Director General of the National Youth Service Corps has reassured core members participating in the March 18th governorship and state assembly elections of adequate security and welfare. He gave the reassurance in a congratulatory message delivered through all state coordinators, noting that the security and welfare of core members is his utmost priority in the coming election.
So this brings to fore some of the larger issues of lack of security across the nation, and what specifically we are talking about the youth corpers or youth corps members in this instance. Now, the direct that he's given guarantees about their security, and I feel I feel it's something that it's in a way outside his control to some extent. And I do wonder about how confident he is about this. So obviously from the last set of elections, there was a report about at least one youth corper was attacked somewhere in Abuja and beaten up. And these are not new things. Apart from the visible signs of attack, where you actually have somebody being physically manhandled, you also have what is the usual threats to life, either by thugs, by political associates and thugs, by communities and all that. And from what we even saw in the last elections, you didn't have enough of the security officers, the police, at all the polling centers, and where they even had disruptions, you basically had them standing aside and watching. So I find it very interesting to see how we can guarantee that the safety of these people, especially in a lot of areas where we know have had security issues for time, like places in the north, places in the southeast, even in the southwest here, where we had thugs attacking particular points and disrupting collation of votes and chasing people away from there. So how do you guarantee anybody who is part of this electoral process that, you know, when they go out there, that they will be safe and they'll be treated safely and, you know, they'll be able to get back to their homes? Yes, you can talk about the welfare. I hope they do have a good welfare package for them, because obviously there has to be a risk and reward. But when he talks about the guaranteed safety, I think they can only do as well as they can. And I think, you know, within NYC itself it's not a security outfit. So obviously it needs the support of the police and whichever security outfit is drafted in to support the elections. But you know, without the youth corps, obviously would face a major manpower deficit in terms of running these elections, because they're essential to expanding the network of electoral officials that are needed across the country. But yes, this is not a problem that is just that is focused just on the elections and youth corps, but it's a general problem. Once we need to get to the point where elections are not seen as do or die affairs. We need to get to the point where we have adequate security across board, even for people to come out and vote. And obviously, we can now guarantee the safety of everybody who is part of the electoral process, including the NYC core members who have volunteered their time and their presence, and in some cases, unfortunately, from past history, their lives to make this process happen.
So let me just chip in very quickly. Nigeria is a wonderful, wonderful country in the sense that even the Nigerian police force cannot guarantee the security of its own officers. The Nigerian army cannot do the same for its soldiers. Cannot guarantee the safety of its electoral officials. Why would the NYCTG guarantee the safety of corpers? And why would anyone believe
it? Very true. Very true,
Interesting.
Mr. Very true.
Let's look at a few messages coming through. Dami says, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Many people shouted from the rooftops that this was going to end badly. They even pointed to the failure of the Indian experiment, but were dismissed. We're addicted to bad ideas and we will suffer for failed policy processes. Oral said, how long does it take to print the new notes in large enough quantity to reach everyone? I know it will take a while, but how long? And this one is from Fabian. Fabian says, I wonder how long it will take for the CBN to come out and respond to the court judgments. Nigerians are really suffering and a large number of people are losing their means of livelihood. Message from JP. It's criminal that we have a government that doesn't obey the law. What is more criminal is also CBN being bereft of planning. People buy 5,000 Naira for 1 5. And where is the president? It's ridiculous. Let's take a quick break, and when we return, we'll continue the conversation on Freshly Pressed. Can you see?
Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
All right. Maybe 5. No, 5:15. Sometimes a bit earlier. Because so Mr. C will combine 2 and 3 together.
Okay.
Mr. C. Okay, good. Oh. Run, see, run like the wind.
What's up?
Okay. No, he can come in.
Hi, Zibby, are we back on?
One Love Music Love Life. This is Freshly Pressed. I've got Mr. C and Chibuzor, my analyst this morning. We want to hear what your thoughts are. 0809 440 981. You can also tweet at smooth981. Now we're moving on to the next story, and this one comes from Premium Times. We're going to merge these two stories. The headline from the Premium Times, and it says, Cash crunch, CPPE calls on Buhari to intervene. And the next headline is from this, okay, this next headline says, governors give Malami Emefiele Tuesday ultimatum to obey Supreme Court. And that one comes from Punt. Now, the Council for Kaduna, Kogi, and Zamfara State, which had dragged the federal government before the Supreme Court, disclosed that Malami was served with the enrolled order and the CTC of the judgment on Friday afternoon. So, 2 stories to look at. The CPPE, which is the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise, calling on the president to intervene, and the Council for the State Governments asking that indeed the federal government respond and obey the Supreme Court's ruling or judgments.
Okay, so thank you, Zibby. Now, as I said earlier in the first story, it's become the effect of this policy, the negative effect of this policy on Nigerians is clear for everyone to see. Now, I did also point or allude to the fact that I had my reservations about whether the CBN would be in a position to comply with the order of the Supreme Court for the simple reason that the CBN might no longer be in possession of a large quantity of the old 500 and 1,000 Naira banknotes. And it would appear that that might be the case. Now, the order was served on them on Friday. It is very possible that the order was received late on Friday, and it's this morning that the key principal guys from the Attorney General of the Federation to the CBN will receive the order. Now, it's instructive that the CBN would also ask the AGF for legal advice with regards to the order and how to go about it. Now, if the CBN takes the position that we do not have those old notes anymore, we've destroyed them, then we have an issue to resolve. We have the issue of the Supreme Court order saying they remain valid.
Yes.
However, if they remain valid and there are no notes, so the CBN will be arguing that it is possible that in one scenario, the CBN will be saying, we're willing to comply with the order, but we do not have the banknotes to comply with the order. Then the question will then be, how soon would you get sufficient quantities of the new notes into circulation. Now, we must also remember that the CBN governor had been reported as saying that he wanted to reduce the amount of money in circulation. Now, prior to the start of this policy, we had about 3.2 trillion in circulation. And he did say about 2.5, 2.6, or 2.7 trillion of that amount was outside the banking system and was affecting the monetary policy tools and policies they were trying to put in place. Now, it is my understanding that he's trying to reduce that money in circulation to a little bit under 2 trillion there. If that is the case, we're never going to get back to those pre-policy levels. Where do we go from here? Because now a huge part of the economy is affected. Because between the micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises, you've easily accounted for at least 60% of the economy because they employ the most people. And if they're affected, and we go by the World Bank 2021 report that says 64 million Nigerians are not in the financial system, that remains a huge, huge problem. But it's Monday. Let's see what the CBN and the AGF come up with this week in response to this order that has been served on them. Let's see if they head back to court, and if they do head back to court, on what basis are they heading back to court? Now, the courts have said they will, and the state attorney generals have said, if there's no compliance with the order, they will then apply for contempt proceedings against the AGF and the CBN government. That's fine. If you apply for contempt proceedings and those gentlemen are remanded in prison, which is unlikely, right? How does that solve the problem of no banknotes? So we should be looking beyond trying to score cheap points. Whether you jail them, whether you shoot them, whether you send them on a shuttle to Mars and they never come back, the issue remains you have a problem of insufficient cash within the system, coupled with the fact that the tech end of the financial industry is coping very badly with the increased surge, with increased expansion. A lot of the banks have lost very good hands in their tech and IT departments, haven't been able to replace them because they cannot offer the same competitive salaries, wages, and fees that the private sector is offering these guys. And you cannot subcontract your key banking apps and solutions to third-party contractors. So there is a dilemma there. I don't know how they intend to resolve it short-term because there is a short-term problem that needs to be resolved. The midterm to long-term, how do we proceed from here? Because it's very frustrating when you have no cash, you can't log on to your bank app, you can't do a transfer, you can't even check your account balance. And it's a very sticky situation when you've gone somewhere that you cannot pay, you cannot determine the cost of what you're ordering immediately. So you go to a restaurant, you order a 3-course meal, or you go to an eatery. The food's being put together. If at that point you cannot transfer, your POS isn't working, where does that leave everyone? Now, we're saying this when it comes to food. Imagine a life or death situation. Someone needs immediate treatment or immediate surgery, and the hospital says, okay, we'd like a deposit. You don't have cash, so they say bring a deposit of 300,000, 1.52 million. Clearly, nobody has a sort of cash except the politicians. You try to swipe with your debit card, no joy, no luck. You try to do a transfer, it's not happening. Meanwhile, there's the life of someone slipping away before your very eyes. Something has to get through.
All right, Sunji says, have you considered, Chibuzor, did you want to add something?
No, I'm good. Nothing on this.
Sunji says, have you considered how much wastage is recorded on virtual goods that cannot be sold because there is no money? Dan Okuda says, economic activities have virtually grounded to a halt because of this Naira redesign policy. Let's go on to The Guardian. The National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, and the NDLEA, in collaboration, and the Nigerian Customs Service have pledged to collaborate in the fight against illicit drug production, trafficking, and use, as well as in curbing related organized crimes. This pledge was made in Lagos at the launch and dissemination of the 2022 annual report of the International Narcotics Control Board and precursors reports.
So yeah, obviously we know that for anybody who lives around Lagos and has even gone to other parts of Nigeria, obviously, we know that drug use or drug abuse, well, I think let's focus on drug abuse is a major issue. And it's not only affecting the younger generation, like most people would like to say, it's also, you have a lot of functional addicts in a lot of businesses, a lot of office spaces, a lot of things. I used to have a joke that if you come and carry out a random drug test in a group of 20, I'm sure you'll find like 15 people who are regular users of drugs. But here, there's obviously, in this particular point, we're talking about a collaboration or some cooperation between the NDLEA and NAFDAC, which is something I expect to happen on a normal basis to control the access to drugs and also the use of drugs within Nigeria. Over the years, we've moved from the point where public use of, in fact, the easiest way you could get picked up by a policeman or a police officer when we were younger was being seen to be reeking of Indian hemp. By that, it was secondhand Indian hemp, or the one you smoked yourself. But today we have these products and this stuff everywhere. You can see it's a no-brainer. If you step out of the room there, you just need to take a walk down the street to be able to get some products. It's that widespread. We've gotten to the point where it's largely abuse. Use is widespread, and we need to cut down on it because of what we are having. And it's not a standalone action, especially for the youth consumption around the youths and the younger people. It's a part of a larger problem. So people are running away from despair, the reality of the country, looking for ways to get higher and higher. So you have all sorts of brand names out there. You know, some of them have a brand, the very interesting thing with some of these brand names are that they are names of exotic locations in places like the US or Canada or those. I won't mention the names here for those that don't know, but those of us that have heard them know what they are. So you do have all these issues of consumption. You have all these issues of abuse. And there needs to be the concerted effort to actually get them out of circulation, or at least to manage the impact and the issues that come with them. Also, one of the things that she's mentioned here, obviously, is the obvious thing which a lot of people have spoken about over time, the legalization of marijuana or cannabis in the country. And she said this. She's also mentioned that's the DG of NDLE. She's also said it's a no-no because we lack the effort to actually stop the illegal production and monitor and prevent the illegal production of those services. And for me, it's almost like a catch-22 because in reality, these things are being produced without us being able to hit them, to be able to prevent it largely today. They're in circulation already today. But I do understand the argument about trying to legalize it also makes it, because if you legalize something, it means you're able to control the supply. It means you're also able to control how it's managed and who gets to use it. But unfortunately, we don't even have a finger on its production. We don't have a finger on that today. So once you legalize it, it basically runs on its own steam and it becomes impossible to actually prevent its use in widespread. So the only thing I can say at the end of this story is that there obviously needs to be a lot more work by the NDLEA. There needs to be a lot more education about the negative use of this stuff and the negative impacts. And it needs to be a lot more focused. I think that's where we need to go. The other talk, we can really do so much at this point. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed this morning. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your messages. And of course, thanks to my analysts, Mr. C and Chibuzor, for joining us this morning.
Thank you,
Zibby. There's a lot more to come. Thank you. On the Speed Breakfast.
Mr. C, you made it finally. Bye. Take care, guys.
Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1.
That's so weird. No, it's not.